All right, gang, as promised, here are some Ocho drills for you so that you come out of the great pandemic of 2020 dancing better than when you went into it. So I'm gonna sort of look at things sort of piece by piece and then talk about going through all the pieces together, right? So the first thing is going to be the way that we manage the pelvis as we take the extension of the leg, right? So rather than keeping everything straight, sending the leg forward, and then sitting back a little bit for balance or just letting ourselves fall, what I want to do to begin with is to start by sitting back a little bit with the pelvis and then sending the leg in response, right? So it's basically creating a counterbalance with the pelvis so that by the time the leg comes out, it's already in a well-balanced position. Around, finish the pivot. Again, finding the counterbalance of the pivot of the pelvis so that I can send the leg. Okay. So what you want to try and do as far as creating that counterbalance in successive ochos is rather than pivot, counterbalance, send the leg, it works much more efficiently to finish the pivot already sitting back a little bit with the hips so that the counterbalance is in place as early as possible, right? So with a few in a row, that would look something like this. Right. As opposed to where I'm making the adjustment right before I start to go for the step. Okay, so the next thing to kind of look at is the way that we manage the collection of the legs, right? And I'm going to show this in the wrong angle so that you can see it more clearly. So as I'm coming forward, basically what I'm starting with is pointing the back leg. When I start to collect, what I'm going to do is take the femur and internally rotate, right? So that brings the thighs in together. So rather than keeping the knee pointed out and taking the legs together, it's an internal rotation and that collects the thighs from the top. Bring the knees together a little bit. And then during the course of the pivot, I'm going to bring the heels a little bit more together. And I think I stepped too close to the camera there. So again, that's going to be like this. I'm here, internally rotate, thighs together, and then progressively collecting the heels during the course of the pivot. Point toe, internally rotate, thighs together, and here. The next piece with that is that when the leg goes from being collected at the thighs and taking the heels together during the course of the pivot, that motion in terms of how the ankle is working, so we're here. As the pivot's underway, I start by flexing the ankle and bringing the feet together. I'm trying to keep the leg, which is, I'm trying to keep the free leg, so the one I'm not standing on, tucked a little bit behind the standing leg, right? So you want to be careful to avoid doing something like this, where you finish up with this knee having come in front of the other one. Instead, the ending position will be something along the lines of here with this knee slightly behind the other one, this ankle slightly behind the other one. Right, so that kind of motion. The next thing that we probably need to look at is the way that the upper body is working. So basically, let's say from the very beginning of the extension, I twist the upper body to the right, which is to say that I'm thinking of turning the rib cage and then the center of the chest and then the head basically to face in the same direction. As I finish changing weight before the pivot, I'm thinking of trying to increase that rotation as much as I can without distorting my posture, right? So if I do something like this where I turn too much, then I start to get a tilt and that's not good. But the amount of rotation that I have right here, right, if my partner's in front of me, if I just maintain that, then I tend to be facing a little bit off to the diagonal by the end. And so what I need is to progressively increase that rotation as I go. And then that sets me up very well for the pivot. Likewise, I want to start creating the opposite rotation at the very beginning of the pivot, right? So rather than something like this, where I've done a full leftward rotation, pivot, and then rotate to the right, what I need to do is to begin the new rotation right away so that I finish the pivot already as twisted as I can be for that position. Then we create a little bit more twist as we change weight. Create the opposition of the twist. A little bit more twist as I change weight, twisting back the other way. Right. So then if you go to put all of these things together and you sort of think about everything like in the proper order, talking about all this stuff that we've gone over, is basically going to be sitting back with the hips, doing the twist of the upper body and sending the leg at the same time. Changing weight onto the leg, pointing through the back one and twisting more, starting the collection, twisting the upper body in the opposite direction and bringing the heel in together. All right. So that's a lot of things to do all at once, but should have picked an easier dance. So sitting back with the hip, send the leg, change weight, twist extra as you're changing. Start to collect, twist the upper body the opposite direction, bring the heels in, making sure that you're finishing with the hips back. Send the leg, extra twisting, point, internally rotate the femur, rotate, heels together. And I find that it's really helpful to keep the arms up in this sort of semi-practice position rather than just letting them be loose or relaxed. Right? When we have the arms working in this way, it helps to create the same sort of twist in the body that we have when we're actually dancing. Okay, so just practice that until the whole pandemic thing blows over, and then we'll check in after that.